Yo, what is up? You have found I Like the Blazers. I am your host, Brandon Goldner, and I am stoked to share that today's guest is Michael Visenberg of RookieWire. We talk about a bunch of stuff, including him growing up in Toronto and being a Blazers fan, the old Brandon Roy and LaMarcus Aldridge, Greg Oden teams, and then trends from around the NBA, just a couple of games in, whether the NBA is more interesting now that there's more parity at the top, about the Warriors dynasty, whether they're going to want to reload and maybe trade Draymond Green, the Western Conference, the top rookies so far, again, early sample size, and then the Blazers defense and whether the culture set by Coach Stotts and Dame can carry through this period of uncertainty and melding together all these new players. But before we get to that, I do want to talk a little bit about the game yesterday. The interview with Michael was recorded on Monday, October 28, but today is Tuesday, October 29. The Blazers lost to the San Antonio Spurs 110 to 113. Damian Lillard had a couple of shots at the end that would have tied the game, including one that was absolutely heartbreakingly 99% in the basket, popped in and out from the left corner as you're looking, from the right corner as you're looking at the basket. And there was like 1.3 seconds left to inbound the ball, and they get it to him in the corner, and he gets the shot up, and it looks like it's going in, and Terry Stotts is leaning over. The whole bench is ready to explode. There's a fan in the audience. He has his arms pumped up, ready just to go nuts, and it doesn't go down, but it was super, super close. An interesting game for a number of reasons, and I want to talk about a couple trends that I saw before we get to the interview with Michael. And the first, it's just interesting that the Blazers, in this game against the Spurs in San Antonio, and remember, this is the second night of a back-to-back where they don't have Zach Collins, and they're also playing without Yusuf Nurkic, obviously, so they're down a couple of important players. But the Blazers led by 19, 6 minutes into the game. So they had nearly a 20-point lead almost immediately. And then as quickly as that came, they trailed, as the game went on, they trailed by, not as quickly as it came. Let me rephrase that. That's what, when you're trying to say a turn of phrase and it doesn't apply to the situation, you just embarrass yourself. That's what I just did right there. But they led by 19, 6 minutes into the game. They trailed by 19 with 6 minutes left in the game. Damian Lillard had not been playing all that well up until that point, and I had to watch the entirety of the fourth quarter all over again just to see what the hell happened, because again, Blazers down 19 with 6 minutes left. You think, pack it up and go home, that's pretty much it. But then Damian Lillard scored 18 points in the last 4 minutes. It was pretty impressive. It was all replicable Damian Lillard stuff. Maybe not replicable for everybody, but he was beating people on drives. He was hitting threes. He was getting fouled. He absolutely took over the game, and it was super, super fun to watch. And the fact that he got 2 shots at the end, both of them would have tied the game, and that last shot with about a second left, I mean, it was like, it hit the side of the rim as he was looking at it, what would be the front of the rim if you were looking straight at the basket. But then it sort of spun toward the backboard and down and looked like it was going in. I mean, it looked like the rotation of the ball was pulling it into the hoop, and it just didn't go down. And it was pretty funny when you look at the video of Damian Lillard right after that shot didn't go in. He was smirking. He was smiling. He knew that it was 99% in and then popped out. So that's the first thing. Blazers led by 19, 6 minutes in, trailed by 19 with 6 minutes left. That is some synchronicity or some symmetry that you don't often see in basketball. So that was interesting. Another thing that jumped out to me, Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum both took 50 shots. Damian Lillard with 28 points, CJ McCollum with 27. Another strong showing from CJ, even though he shot under 50%. Damian Lillard making up most of that ground in that fourth quarter, in which, again, he scored 18 points in the last 4 minutes of the game. But Lillard and McCollum combining for 50, the rest of the team combining for 50. So the Blazers took 100 shots. Dame and CJ took 50 of those. That can't be how they get their offense, even though I know, again, they're missing Zach Collins. They've got to see more from other players. People have to contribute more than that. Rodney Hood is 3 for 7. Mario Hezonja, 2 for 7. Anthony Simons, 5 for 9, which is respectable in his 21 minutes. Kent Bazemore was unfortunately 1 for 9. While his frenetic energy looks good, and I'm all for people contributing on the court outside of the box score. When you watch the game, it was obvious he was having some positive impact. When you look at his negative 20 plus minus, which was by far the team worst, when you look at the fact that he was 1 for 9, those are 9 shots that could have come from somewhere else that maybe should have gone down. And, there's a lot of, I think, leniency for players like Kent Bazemore in Portland because he does play with passion. He plays with a lot of energy. You can see the care on his face. You can tell that he is giving his full faith and effort. And that resonates with me as a fan. I think it resonates with a lot of people as fans, but it doesn't always mean that someone's contributing. So in his 24 minutes, he was pretty woeful. So that's the second thing. 50 shots of the Blazers 100 coming from Dame and CJ, and they've got to figure out how to spread it out a little bit more than that. And one more thing, to be fair, like Dame and CJ are going to get theirs. And it's not the worst thing in the world that they combine for 50 shots. That's not the most horrible thing. It's just that they need to find production elsewhere. I haven't seen enough. I haven't watched enough games. It's only been 4 games. The Blazers are 2-2 for me to have an opinion about where that needs to come from yet. Don't worry. I will have an opinion about it as I do with everything Blazers related, whether it's well informed or not, unfortunately. But as of right now, I'm reserving judgment. I need to see more before I can say, okay, this is where it really needs to come from. So that's the second thing. The third thing is Damian Lillard. He has 3 dunks in this 2019-20 season in 4 games, including a really nice dunk near the end of the game during that 18-point in 4 minutes outburst that pulled the Blazers back to almost sending the game into overtime. But Dame with 3 dunks in 4 games, again, small sample size theater, but if he continues on that pace for 82 games, he'll have 61 dunks. The highest he's ever had in one season is 30, and that's back in 2013-14. So again, I know, caveat, small sample size. I'm not saying that Damian Lillard is going to be dunking 60 times this season. What I'm saying is, at least early, he obviously physically feels really, really good. Dunks are an indication, especially for smaller players, of how okay they're doing physically, of how, like, if someone is known for dunking and later in their career the dunking slows down, as it will at some point for Dame, that tells you their athleticism is waning a little bit. But for Damian Lillard, again, very much a veteran at this point, to be dunking this often, I think is a good sign. And also, beyond just the dunking, I'm not saying that stat means a whole lot in and of itself. What I am saying is that it's indicative of when you watch him, he looks fresh. He looks good to go. He looks ready for the season. Players talk about how they carry nagging injuries as the season goes on. It's just good to me to see the Blazers' best player coming into the season looking about as healthy as he can look. So that's good news. So that's the third thing. There was one more thing I wanted to talk about, and then we're going to get to Michael, and that's Scala BCA. When I rewatched that fourth quarter, some of those, I almost said many, but some of those fourth quarter minutes had Scala BCA in there. And when you look at his line, it doesn't jump out. He played 13 minutes. He was 4 for 5. He had 6 rebounds and 10 points, and was a -6 in that time. But when you watch him play, he looks capable, which that's super important given that Zach Collins is out. And as of today, again, as of Tuesday, the 29th, we know that Zach Collins will be out next game, but we don't yet have a timetable for his return from that dislocated shoulder. But Scal looked competent. He looked aware. He looked nimble. He had a number of putbacks. He had a number of times when he was just around the rim at the right time and just sort of where he needed to be given the situation. And for the Blazers, that's really, really important when you don't have Yusuf Nurkic, when you don't have Zach Collins, when Anthony Tolliver looks like a husk of his former self. Although, to his credit, he was a +8, which was a team best, +8 in his 29 minutes with 10 boards. So maybe Coach Stotts knows something that we don't, even though he went 1 for 4 for the field, did Anthony Tolliver. But given that you have such a dearth of center minutes right now, Scal looking competent, looking aware, looking nimble, looking like he's in the right place at the right time, that is extremely valuable for the Blazers, because outside of Whiteside and Scal, who are you looking for your center minutes? Are you going to be looking at Mario Hezonja again during that Dallas game when they didn't have anyone else to play center and suddenly Mario Hezonja is trying to guard Kristaps Porzingis? You don't want to see a whole lot of that. So the more that Skal can get minutes and look competent in those minutes, the better as far as I'm concerned. And by the way, here's something about those 6 rebounds. Every last one of them was an offensive board. So what I don't see, what I would like to see, by the way, 6 offensive rebounds in a game is a lot. The fact that he got 0 defensive rebounds means that he's probably creating space for his teammates to get some of those rebounds. I was about to say, I wish I could see the stats that show, a shot goes up and is the player boxing out, or are they in the vicinity of the rebound, or did they make space for their teammate to come in and grab the board? Because I would be interested to know if he's creating rebounds for other people, and those 6 offensive rebounds are really, those are extra possessions. Every last one of those is an extra possession. And in a game where possessions are everything, that is extremely important. So I'm saying, put a couple of chips of your stock into Skal BCA company, or what do they call it? Ben Golliver and Andrew Sharp, who I miss on Open Floor, talking a lot about Giannis Inc. So Skal Inc., put some money into Skal Inc. stocks, because I think the Blazers, A, they're going to need him, and B, he looks pretty good. And if he's given the opportunity, I hope that continues moving into the season. So with that, one more little word on the Blazers. They are 2-2 in this very difficult Western Conference. They stand kind of in the middle of the Northwest Division, where, again, no team has played more than 4 games. So there's not really all that much you can say about it, and I get that. But their next game is going to be at Oklahoma City tomorrow, Wednesday, October 30th. They're going to be playing Chris Paul and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Steven Adams and some other people. So I know it's a road trip. I know that they've already won 2 games on this 4-game road trip. I know that going 50% on a road trip is good, and that maybe the Blazers are like, look, we got our 2 wins. It is what it is. But I would like to see the Blazers win this game against Oklahoma City. I know there's a whole lot of people talking about betting lines, and gambling is becoming legal, and it's the thing that you need to know about if you're talking about the NBA. And I promise I will get better with my betting and gambling lingo, and I'll kind of weave it in as time goes on. I'm never going to be one of those people who's like super into that just because it's not my bag. But if I were a betting person, here's my stepping my toe into the water of gambling and betting and stuff like that. If I were a betting person, I would bet for the Blazers to win this game. I hope that they do, and that would be great. Blazers would come back from that road trip 3-1 on the trip, 3-2 overall if they do win that game. But time will tell us. And that right now they're 2-2, and excited to see where the season takes them from here. Feel like I'm starting to get to know this team a little better. Feel like I'm starting to be able to kind of do the snap association from the player on the screen to who it actually is. You know that feeling you get when you're last year watching Evan Turner and Aminu and Harkless and Myers Leonard, and you just see them, you know who these people are. Now it's like, kind of have to think about it. Whose number is that? It's Bazemore. It's someone else. So I'm starting to get that kind of muscle memory watching a team, which is a lot of fun. That means they're starting to grow on me as a fan. That's what you want to feel. You want to care about your team. So with all of that, again, super stoked to have Michael Visenberg of RookieWire as my guest, and here's our conversation coming right now. Mr. Visenberg, I presume?
Yes, Mr. Goldner. Thank you for having me on.
How is that in your ranking of like awkward openings on a scale of 1 to 10?
I wouldn't even give it that much of one. I'd say maybe it's a 4.
I need to do better next time. I'm trying to make my guests as uncomfortable as humanly possible. Thanks for taking the time.
Try harder, Brandon.
Yeah, I do. I know. I need to try harder in all things, including with making people feel uncomfortable. I wanted to start because, I mean, you've been on podcasts I've hosted before. You used to host the Trailcasters. I don't know if I've ever asked you, why are you interested in basketball? You work for RookieWire. Why are you interested in basketball in the first place?
I would have to say it probably, a large part of it started in Portland. And I had grandparents that lived in Portland. I lived in Toronto. And every time I would come out to visit them in Portland, which we would do at least like a month out of every year, I would constantly see sports on the television. And like when I was a little kid, I wasn't too into it, but I think about the time I got to be like 8 or 9, I just latched onto basketball. And my grandparents like took me to like a Blazer game, and something that really like captivated me also was the '92 Dream Team. Like my grandparents got to see the exhibition when they came to Portland the year before.
Nice.
And I had a little Michael Jordan jersey. My brother had a little Magic Johnson USA jersey. And yeah, that was a huge part of it as well. My parents took me to see Michael Jordan play when I was in the 3rd grade, I believe. And it was an exhibition game they had in Toronto where they played Cleveland. And that was really cool. And Shaquille O'Neal was like another huge part of my early basketball memories as well.
Dude, me too.
And
like
just got very into it. Yeah. So
I had an aunt that lived in Orlando, and she like went to a game and sent me a picture of him on the early 90s Jumbotron. It was like, look, Brandon, I got to see Shaquille O'Neal in person. I was like, holy shit.
That's so cool.
Thanks, Auntie Joanne. I appreciate you.
I got to see Shaq when he played against the Raptors with Orlando. I got to see him with the Lakers.
So wait a minute.
I'm not sure about later on, but yeah.
You lived in Toronto, but your grandparents were in Portland. So when Toronto got a team, were you a Raptors fan or were you a Blazers fan, or what was your fandom?
So it actually took me a long time to become a Blazers fan. I didn't become a Blazers fan really until I started living in Portland myself shortly after college. And a huge part of that was just seeing how bright the future of the team was at that time, at least, on paper, when they had Brandon Roy, LaMarcus Aldridge, and Greg Oden.
Oh, yeah.
And Rudy Fernandez and, ladies love cool Rudy.
You were chalking up like multiple finals appearances at least.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It looked like it.
That's how it felt to me too.
If they would have stayed healthy, man, like every time we talk about like health hypotheticals, that is a huge one.
So really quick, I'm good. I don't want to go too far into nostalgia, but I have to ask. I mean, the team that they have now is super fun to watch. We all love Dame. He's really, really good. Do you think that the ceiling of this Blazers core is any higher than it was when we thought that Brandon Roy and LaMarcus Aldridge and Greg Oden would all be healthy? Do you think this current team has a higher ceiling than that previous team when they were all healthy? This is a trap question. This is a complete bullshit question.
I know.
Because we know what the answer is.
Yeah. Like, in the thing is, we've seen what this team can actually do.
Yes.
And that has gotten us thus far. And the other team, it was so much based on potential.
The other team never made it out of the first round.
Yeah, exactly. So, like the other team, based on potential, you were way more excited about the other team. Based on what has actually happened, like this team is, to me, it's such a fun team. And like, that's a huge part. I know whenever I would come on your guys' podcast, I would talk about like how, they'd eventually have to move on from Dame or CJ, usually CJ. But it's so much fun to watch them. And they're still going to be a fun team this year. And they have some great pieces. So like the fact that they made the Western Conference Finals last year, plus, just some of the matchups they had in the playoffs. Like last year was an epic season for the Portland Trail Blazers.
It was so much fun.
It was wonderful. It was wonderful. The playoffs were amazing. The game I went to where I saw you guys, like that was, oh my God. 4 overtime classic.
That was so exhausting, but like in the best possible way.
It was incredible.
Yeah, so, I find, and maybe I don't know if it's just I'm older or whatever, like my fandom has evolved. I find that this team is the easiest for me to root for. Like Damian Lillard is so easy for me to root for, so easy for me to get behind. Like I feel like I never really got to know Brandon Roy like as a personality. He wasn't really that type of dude. And LaMarcus Aldridge the same way. And like I was maybe too young for Clyde, and like social media didn't exist back then. And like I don't know. It's just like so for whatever what may happen for whatever happens from now on. It's a great team, but let's pivot to what is actually happening now in the NBA. We're recording on Tuesday, October 28th. I think that the most games any team has played at the conclusion of today will be just 4 games. So it's super early. So we need to get some super hot takes in. Way too early reactions from what you've seen around the NBA. What kind of trends or aberrations or weird things or interesting things from just around the league are catching your eye the most so early in the season so far?
I would think the way that Minnesota's played so far has been really interesting. That wasn't something I expected. And with Karl Anthony Towns being, one of the top 10, 15 players in the league, he's been fantastic. And they look like a team. The Phoenix Suns, that's been another, I feel like they at least had a few role players to put around Devin Booker now. So, with Rubio, they had a bit of an improvement there at point guard, or a massive improvement over not really having anybody other than Devin Booker handle the ball consistently. And even with DeAndre Ayton going down, like bringing in Aaron Baines is that, nice, safety blanket. So, yeah, and then some of the improvements of second-year guys, just like, you knew Wendell Carter Jr. was a guy who was bound to have a huge second season. But just even like Trae Young and Luka becoming, like, kind of taking that next step where you can see them both being all-stars. And then Jaren Jackson Jr. has been fantastic as well. The only thing I'm really missing right now is we all wanted to see Zion Williamson, of course. And I can't wait for that to happen. But and even some of the rookies have been very interesting. Like yesterday, that matchup with Brooklyn and Memphis. John Morant had a great game, and Kyrie Irving is a threat to lead the NBA in scoring this year. He was fantastic as well. But John Morant had some huge plays at the end of that game. He tied it up to send it into overtime. He had the assist to Crowder, kind of reminiscing of that North Carolina Villanova game where Chris Jenkins hit the huge shot. It was it's a really fun season, and it's really wide open. So, just very early takes, of course. And I like how some people are already, I had somebody in one of my group chats saying that they wouldn't be surprised if Trae Young had a better season than Stephen Curry, which I found to be a remarkably hot take. But
that's
Trae Young has had a fantastic start, and
Steph Curry's not been particularly good. I mean,
the Warriors are struggling, but he's still Stephen Curry. He's like, I don't understand how you can take 2 games, albeit 2 fantastic games, and a quarter of play against Philadelphia, and kind of forget what has happened over the last 5 years. But we'll see. And ultimately, that is what being an all-star comes down to, is just having that consistency. And we'll see if they can keep it up. But so far, Trae Young has looked fantastic in the early play for Atlanta.
Well, I want to go back to something you just said, which is the NBA feels like it's more wide open now, which I totally agree with. And especially at the top, there just seems to be more parity. There seem to be a clump of teams who can legitimately say that we are title contenders, where in the years past, it's been like 1 or maybe 2 teams. I wanted to ask that reality, is that more interesting for you as an analyst and or you as a fan of the game? Is it more interesting when you have that competition at the top? Like, is it more compelling for you? I'm not talking about the casual fan who might enjoy the super teams and all that bullshit, but just for you as someone who's deep into the game, is it more interesting to know that there are more potential storylines, or would you rather have that more consistent narrative and something you're more familiar with?
I kind of like having, it be more wide open. With the Warriors being as dominant as they were, it was always, you always had something to talk about with them, because, it was like, oh, who can beat the Warriors? And kind of like, it was just kind of slated against that one team. And then you had 4 seasons of LeBron trying to beat the Warriors and everything there. But yeah, I feel like maybe I was a little more excited for this season, even though last season ended in a way that, like, I don't think too many people predicted the Warriors losing the championship last year. And the Raptors just had a fantastically constructed team, and the Kawhi trade was completely worth it just based off of winning that championship. Yeah, even with like them being gone and everything like that, like I still think they really did something really special. So that was, and plus they eventually, like, DeMar would have been a huge player on their cap as well. So yeah, like that ended up working out. But yeah, I'm really excited about this season, and I think there are like at least 3 or so teams in each conference that have a chance to be the favorite come April.
And I wanted to ask you something related to that. And pardon me if this sounds a little nebulous or weird, but let me try to get this question out. With the NBA, it had some super teams, and now there's like this enormous amount of parity. And instead of like 3 superstar teams, you have like a lot of like 2 superstar teams. I'm wondering if maybe part of that clumping together of players is because players are getting more and more power proportionate to the league and proportionate to owners than they've seen in years past. Like we say player empowerment movement, and we're talking about a larger share of the revenue. We're talking about players can control their own communications narrative through social media, so they need traditional media less. They need that platform of the big markets less, and so players have more and more power in the league. I'm wondering if because of that, is there this like super team stasis that the NBA's kind of natural balancing point wants to tip back into super teams, wants to tip back into players bunching up and all kind of like trying to join together? Or do you think that was just like an aberration and just sort of circumstance and happen chance, and like the Warriors got lucky with the cap spike and Steph Curry's contract and all that kind of stuff? Like, do you think that, what I'm trying to ask is, do you think that there's some natural pull for the NBA to have like just a handful of like really, really good teams?
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of been like in league history. Like, other than if you look by decade, usually there have just been a few teams who have kind of been like those championship run teams.
It's true.
And yeah, like the 70s was probably where you had like the most parity as far as, you had a few teams that were like fantastic at the beginning of the decade. And then towards the end of the decade, when the Blazers won one, like you had a few other teams in there. And I don't know if that was the most exciting decade. Like,
Sonics snuck one in there.
Yeah, exactly. Sonics. You got the Bullets. Like it was an interesting decade of basketball, but I don't know if it was as exciting as the 80s when you had the Lakers and Celtics dominate that.
Yeah, history really 90s, smiles on those dynasties.
Oh, for sure. And yes, like much of that was built through the draft, but it's kind of always been like the player that wants to go to that big market team or something along those lines. So yeah, like I don't feel like it's that much off of history. Just the way that it's happening is maybe a little bit different. But like you see in Milwaukee right now, like they built themselves a fantastic team, and that was around the draft and, getting lucky, getting like a guy like Giannis as the 15th pick, with people not necessarily knowing he was going to end up being maybe the best player in the NBA. It can happen.
They have both Lopez brothers. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Robin Lopez
that's
is out
going
there
to win
shooting
them championship
now? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. Did you see that? I just saw the little thing the other night of when Brooke Lopez's 3 bounced in and Robin Lopez like gave like the shoulder shrug on the bench. It was fantastic. Yeah, it's really fun to have those two guys actually playing together. Twins playing together it's fun.
It's amazing.
And yeah, but like you saw with Milwaukee, even like a team like Denver, like, they did a great job building through the draft, and they got some nice pieces, and now they're kind of in the mix of things too, and Utah. So, yeah, it's. I know that the super teams are still who we want to talk about, and like, the teams that have like top 5 to 10 players in the league. But there's some teams that just drafted these guys and now they're in the mix as well.
Yeah. And look at the Raptors had one clear-cut, absolute grade A superstar. If the Bucks happen to win this year, they're going to have one clear-cut, absolute superstar. Like, so you're right. Maybe.
So I will say that the Raptors had a couple guys who you didn't know were like all-stars who were fantastic.
That's true.
And even the Bucks, have some like excellent role players. So it's about team construction, and that. I think the Warriors miss Kevin Durant, obviously. They miss Klay Thompson, but they miss Andre Iguodala and they miss Sean Livingston as well. So, it was all of those role guys that really made them such a great team.
Yeah, it's true. Team construction is huge. And with that, I do want to talk about the Western Conference for a second. I know all of this is like super early returns. I get that. But, I have content to put out. So, I got to talk about it. I want to talk about the Warriors really quick, because it's not just that they've lost both of their games, is that they've lost both of their games in terrifying fashion. So they have a league worst second to league worst to the Kings. I'm sorry, but their point differential is negative 23.5. I know it's only 2 games, but I know they don't have any healthy centers, but they look discombobulated. There was some chatter on Blazers Twitter today. And to be fair, it was couched with "this is a pipe dream," but there was some chatter about, hey, if Draymond is only going to be maximized in a system where he has shooters and a legit center, I know a team that has something like that, the Portland Trailblazers, and then would the Warriors be willing to part with Draymond Green? And I get they have a new arena, they need people to go to the games. I understand that, so I just wanted to throw that out there and leave it aside. But what I wanted to ask was, the Warriors, they're waiting for Klay Thompson to come back. So, but meanwhile, Steph Curry is 31, 32. Draymond is not getting any younger. This Warriors team that is so used to winning, it's been this insanely dynastic franchise. They have a brand new arena, blah, 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 blah. Can they afford to punt an entire year? Can they afford to spend an entire year of Steph Curry's prime kind of waiting for Klay Thompson to get back? Or do you think they're going to make a move maybe? At the trade deadline or past December, and they can trade D'Angelo Russell? Is that something they can do? I'm just curious, because they've been so good for so long. And if they're just waiting for some dude to get back, it just seems like, are they really going to wait until next year? I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about that? It's just something I'm curious about.
Yeah, I think that it was kind of did people really expect the Warriors to compete for the championship this year?
No, but I don't think they expected them to look this bad this early.
Yeah, well, I think it's way too early to completely write them off. They're playing pretty well tonight against the Pelicans, albeit the defeated Pelicans rather than undefeated. But they. I think it's they were saying the same thing about LeBron last year. And then they go out and get Anthony Davis, and it looks like they're at least going to be okay. And I feel like the Warriors will probably be the same way. And then you have that trade chip with D'Lo. So I think they'll eventually they're going to kind of find themselves. And
I wanted you to talk shit about the Warriors. Come on, man.
I don't know. I have a hard time doing that. I have a hard time doing that, even though I would actively root against the Warriors, but I have
or at least they're fans.
A hard time just completely writing off a player like Steph Curry and Draymond Green, even if this should make people maybe evaluate where exactly they would put them if these struggles continue.
Yeah, I think that's a fair take. Let's talk about the rookies, and then let's get a couple Blazers questions in, get you out. I'm sad that we can't talk about rookies in the context of the Blazers. The Blazers are not going to have any rookies that crack this list, which is scoring. And I know that there are lots of other ways to measure the efficiency and measure the effectiveness of players and just their scoring. But just for the sake of keeping it simple, I wanted to tick down the list of the top 5 scoring rookies so far this year, and just wanted to get your reaction of like which of these players surprises you most to be on that list. So we have the top scoring rookie is Kendrick Nunn at 22.3 points a game. Number 2 is RJ Barrett at 21 points. Number 3 is Ja Morant at 18. Number 4 is Kobe White at 16.7, and number 5 is Rui Hachimura at 16.3. Of those 5 names, Nunn, Barrett, Morant, White, and Hachimura, which of those rookies surprises you the most to be on that top 5 scoring list?
Well, Kendrick Nunn. Kendrick Nunn, I saw he had that 40-point game at the end of the preseason. The fact that, everybody was talking about Tyler Hero, and they're starting together right now, and Kendrick Nunn right now is leading rookies in scoring. Like, but even with him, so he played a year, or he was at University of Oakland, started at University of Illinois, but transferred. And he was the second leading scorer to Trae Young in the NCAA. So we knew he could like put the ball in the bucket, and he had a good year. He could shoot. It's still surprising. He didn't play in the NBA last year. I think there were maybe some off-court issues that were involved with that, and might have been some injuries possibly. But he certainly seems like he's garnered a role on Miami so far. And it will be interesting to see what Jim plays for the Heat. Like this guy is putting up buckets. The other 2 guys who follow him, RJ and Ja, were the 2nd and 3rd pick in the draft, so you kind of expected them. Kobe White has been doing really well. He was the 7th pick in the draft. But yeah, I wasn't sure he was going to get as much playing time as he has, even though I was very high on him going into the draft as well. And then Rui Hachimura was a guy you knew was going to play a lot. He was the 9th pick. There was a huge separation between like draft Twitter people who didn't think he had a great feel for the game, and then scouts who loved the intangibles and, the shooting and the body and the athleticism. So, I knew he was going to play quite a bit. The guy right after him is PJ Washington, and I think he has come out of the gates like on fire. He had, I think, 5 3-pointers in like the first half of his first NBA game and scored 27 points. Like those 2 guys look like legit, role players for their teams right now, albeit 2 of the worst teams in the NBA.
Yeah, but I mean, those teams are usually the ones where the rookies get the most play and get to show the most, right? They get the most counting stats. If you were to guess, and all of this is way too early, but okay, fine, I'm going to qualify it every time. With Zion Williamson being out, let's just assume, and this is crappy to assume, but let's assume that Zion doesn't end up playing enough games to qualify. From what you've seen so far, what you saw of them in college, who do you think is the favorite to win Rookie of the Year if you're taking Zion out of the equation?
I think it might be Ja. And that was just based on like a few games so far. I'm a big RJ Barrett guy as well, and I feel like he can put it together. I just think the Knicks are kind of a mess. I think that Memphis might win more games. Ja's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. Great passer. He's shown that he can, make some really athletic finishes as well. So yeah, if I would say Ja after Zion, I'm holding out that Zion. I feel like if Zion plays like half a season, then he might even do enough to win Rookie of the Year. Like in retrospect, Joel Embiid played 31 games his rookie year. The team had won 10 games the year before. They won 13 with him in those 31 games. Like he made a huge impact and was by far like the best player when he was playing. Malcolm Brogdon ended up winning because he played in every game, and the Bucks ended up having like a decent year. But I feel like I would put the over under Zion win the rookie. Like as far as games go, I could see him playing like 41 games and him still winning Rookie of the Year.
Well, and part of that calculus for people who are voting on that stuff is they have to measure the total value a player had during the season versus the impact they had when they played. And I think that voters are getting, voters are getting more and more savvy about how is this going to look if you project it forward. Like if we don't pick Zion, like if he plays 47 games and he's really good in those 47, and then he ends up having an amazing career, we don't pick him for Rookie of the Year. How's that going to look? The history books are not going to smile on that. So yeah, I feel you on that. Let's talk about the Blazers. I know that you did watch the first game, the Blazers between when they played Sacramento Kings. Sorry, it's getting late in the day. I already worked. My brain is fried. And there were some things in that game that showed up that are continuing to show up in the games they played since, and particularly their defense, and particularly their 3-point defense. So as we stand now, if you're not counting this game against the Spurs, which as of recording, it's at halftime and the Blazers have a slight lead, the Blazers are 29th in 3-pointers allowed, and I believe 26th in 3-point percentage allowed. That means they're giving up a lot of threes, and the threes they give up are going in. That's not good. I mean, they lost Harkless, they lost Aminu, and I understand there's going to be some deficiencies on defense there. But from what you saw in that Kings game, do you think that some of the problems that the Blazers have on defense, do you think that some of them are fixable with fit and cohesion and scheme? Or do you think it's just a lack of talent, that there's just something there, or rather something not there, that is leading to this woeful defensive outcome?
I feel like it's been something they struggled with, like as far as just with guards in general. Like Dame and CJ are guys who are, if they're not hitting their shots, then the Blazers could be in trouble. Harkless and Aminu helped in a big way as far as that went. And I'm not sure that they replaced them necessarily with the defensive equivalent. Plus, you get teams like Denver, and like that's a area where Hassan Whiteside may like kind of struggle. And like even like Zach, like as great as Zach has been defensively, like if you get him on the perimeter, it's not necessarily like his best case scenario. So I do think it's fixable, and I'm guessing they'll focus on that more as the season goes on. But yeah, it's definitely something to monitor with the Blazers, and it could be a huge issue because we see that teams are like flamethrowing against them right now.
And with that, do you as someone who follows the NBA and is a fan of the Blazers, at least, I would qualify you as way more of a professional than me. So I'm just going to say that you're a professional. Do you think that, and this is something that I've asked, I think, all of my guests so far, do you think that there's something about whatever culture or leadership that Coach Stotts and Dame brings that will allow this team, which turned over 70% of its minutes in the starting positions either by losing them or they're injured in Nurkic, and all like a bunch of really important role players, they lost so many people. Do you think that there's something about the leadership and cohesion qualities of Stotts and Dame that will allow this Blazers team to come together more quickly than they otherwise would? Or is that whole kind of leadership culture thing just sort of something Blazers fans tell themselves to feel better at night, basically? Is that a real thing?
It could be.
I want a definitive answer, sir, backed by science.
I would say, like, science has shown that Coach Stotts and Dame usually have the Blazers on the right path. And I feel like a lot of people are questioning this team. Like, a lot of people really question the offseason moves. And,
including me,
things
to be fair.
Yeah.
The name of the podcast is I Like the Blazers, and I'm questioning it, so.
Yeah. Well, and for good reason. Like, they gave up some valuable pieces, and missing Nurk, like, even hit them in the playoffs a little bit. He would have been likely, like, really helped against a team like Golden State, even though, like, Golden State going small and everything like that. But yeah, like, Nurk certainly would have helped there. And we see like Harkless playing a nice role with the Clippers right now. And we're still not completely sure like what our wing situation is going to be like as the season progresses. Like getting Rodney back is nice, but is Rodney going to be like that third guy you rely on as a scorer, or is he going to play like he did against Denver, or is he going to play like he did against Oklahoma City?
I think they're hoping that he's going to be a contributor, right? I mean, they're going to need double digits from him like every night. But
like what level? That they're hoping a higher level, and I'm totally in on Anthony Simons, by the way. But a guy like Kent Bazemore, like what level is he going to bring? Like who's going to kind of be that guy who becomes either the wing defender or the guy you kind of rely on if Dame and CJ might be off on a given night. So yeah, they're still looking for that, but I feel like with Coach Stotts and with Damian and with CJ, they have something to build on. And that's like a reason why I think you can be like, say, okay, the Hassan Whiteside thing at least is workable because of his relationship with those guys. And that's why you could see the Blazers, I feel, still being a playoff team.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I mean, I get that expectations are pretty high. They made the Western Conference Finals, and so there's a lot of talk about we look at ourselves as a championship team. I think you have to tell yourself that if you're the team. As someone who's watching the team, that's a larger pill to swallow, if that's a saying. But no, I'm with you. I think that you can absorb a little bit of that because of what Damon Stotts brings. All right, man, with that, I appreciate you. Thank you for your time. Michael Visenberg, if people wanted to connect with you or check out your work, how would they do that?
NBA Draft Mikey V on Twitter. And I'm doing stuff with RookieWire right now from USA Today. So yeah, if you go to RookieWire, type it into Google, it should come up.
Nice, man. Appreciate you. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you again to Michael Visenberg of RookieWire. It's always a lot of fun to have him on the show, and we were talking after recording ended about how I was trying to get him to make like a hot take, and he's just not going to do it. He's a reasonable and measured dude and a smart dude. He just doesn't want to do the hot take business. Damn it. Really wanted to catch him with one of those. Didn't work out this time. Follow his work at RookieWire. And with that, I think that's about it. Again, as I said in the first part, the Blazers are playing the Thunder tomorrow, Wednesday, October 30. Hoping if they win that game, which they should, they'll be 3-1 on this road trip, which would be great. And we're definitely back with another episode of I Like the Blazers as soon as we can do it. And if you want to follow us, please do at ILiketheBlazers on Twitter. We're also on Facebook. You can send us an email at ILiketheBlazers@gmail.com. But what I would really, really appreciate if you're able to do it, please, on any podcatcher that you're using, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Google Play or CastBox or Spotify or Stitcher, we should be on all of those. I would love for you to please subscribe and please give a review. The reviews matter a lot, more than you'll understand. I don't know why some executive at Apple thought that pushing your finger to a star means that your podcast deserves more visibility and should show up more in searches. And I mean, I do know why, because how else are you going to do it? I get that. But it really, really matters. So if you enjoy the show, if you dig what we're doing, if you like the guests, then please give us a 5-star review. It would be highly, highly appreciated. And that's about it for I Like the Blazers. I am your host, Brandon Goldner. Until next time, thank you so much. And yeah, go Blazers.